Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Beat the Big Guys. I'm your host, Sandy Rosenthal, and I'm so excited to see you all again. My guest from today is from a state I usually don't talk with. I'm starting again, Jess. My guest today is from a state I don't think I've ever had a guest from, and that is the great state of Oklahoma. And my guest is Lauren McGough. Hi, Lauren.
Sandy. Oh, it's great to be here.
Oh, it's. I am so thrilled to have you. As all of my guests know, I'm from New Orleans, but I've never been to the great state of Oklahoma. That's a little embarrassing. When
It
I
might
come to
just surprise you.
Oklahoma, when I come to Oklahoma, what do you recommend I do?
Oh man. Well, Oklahoma City has had a lot of innovations lately. Bricktown, downtown Oklahoma City can be quite nice. We've got a wonderful civic center, performing arts center. But yeah, I there's a small town charm even to Oklahoma City, I think you would enjoy.
Well, I like the sound of that. I live in New Orleans, which definitely has a small town charm, and we're something that we're very, very proud of. So I'm looking forward to that day coming when I visit Oklahoma. I'd love for that to happen. I'm going to start, Lauren, and tell my guests a little bit more about you before we get started. Okay?
Mhm.
Okay. Lauren McGough is a passionate eagle falconer and an anthropologist that specializes in human animal partnerships. She spent 2 years living in Mongolia, where she lived with nomadic Kazakh people and learned to hunt in partnership with eagles. Bringing that knowledge home, she now uses falconry techniques to fly and rehabilitate young golden eagles in the American West. That sounds like such amazing work. Lauren, did I pronounce Kazakh properly?
You did. That was perfect.
I'm thrilled. I'm glad I got something right. We're off to a great start. So I have been admiring falconers. There are some falconers here in New Orleans. I have seen them over by, we have canals, a lot of canals, and I've seen falconers bringing what to be honest, I'm not sure what sort of birds they were. They were not eagles by any stretch. They were smaller birds, and I think I've always assumed that they were falcons, and would fly them around, and I would watch, and they would always come back, and so I've actually seen them with my own eyes, but I really know so little about them. I'm so learning. I am so looking forward to learning more about that right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are a small community, so I have good falconer friends in New Orleans and also Baton Rouge.
Well,
So we
for
might,
all I know, you may know the falconer that I've seen.
I think there's a decent chance.
It's a gentleman. It's a man, but that's the only thing I know.
All right. Yeah, yeah. It was probably Harris Hawks or Kestrels, which
Wow.
is a very small falcon, but they do well in that environment there.
Kestrels or what?
Harris Hawks?
Huh, I'm not even familiar with that bird. Yeah, it
It's
wasn't
a
large.
Yeah, Harris hawks are a hawk in the Southwest, but they're very adaptable. They hunt together in the wild, so they very easily transfer that ability to hunt with another hawk towards you as a hunting partner.
Yeah,
Um,
kestrels are rather small, so I
kestrels
suspect
are
it.
quite small.
Yeah, and I was up at a distance in a building nearby, so it must have been a hawk.
Mm.
It must have. That is so cool. That is so cool. And I saw this gentleman about 3 or 4 years ago, and he actually wasn't in the city of New Orleans. He was actually in the nearby city of Metairie by a canal.
All
I
right,
don't know if
yeah,
that's any information for you. And from what I understand, he goes a lot because
yeah.
I found out about it when I was in my doctor's office, and the doctor went, "Oh, look, the falconer's out there." And everyone come run into the window to watch. So that is so cool. We have a connection. We very possibly have a connection. So anyway, I've chatted enough, Laura. I'm so looking forward to hearing more about your work with the art and science of falconry.
Absolutely. So I there's a saying among falconers that we were born falconers. We just didn't know it yet. There's some inciting incident that makes us realize, oh, I'm a falconer. And for me, that was when I was 14. I found a book in the library called A Rage for Falcons by Steve Bodio, and which was about this falconer's journey in the US. And it sounded like the most incredible thing. And I had only conceived of falconry as something that maybe medieval knights did hundreds of years ago in England, not something that could be done today in the United States. But I quickly came to realize that there is a thriving community here in the US. It's not many, 7,000 falconers. We are all permitted by the states that we live in, and it's one of the most heavily regulated field sports. But as soon as I found out that it was possible, 14 is the minimum age, it was at the time, to get my license and become a falconer, I just knew that's what I had to do. And I was really lucky. I reached out to the president of the Oklahoma Falconers Association. So this was in 2000, 2001. And he had 3 daughters, none of whom were interested in falconry. And so it was just quite nice. He was happy to teach me, and I was happy to learn. And he helped me with my very first hawk, a red-tailed hawk, and taught me how to hunt rabbits. And then from then on, I just knew it was something I always had to do. And this is my 22nd season now since then. And I've flown. One of the very cool things about falconry is it can be there are many different niches, from the small kestrels that we mentioned and sparrowhawks, where you're pursuing sparrows or starlings, all the way up to golden eagles, where you're pursuing foxes or jackrabbits. And you could spend a lifetime just within one niche. And so I discovered, after I got my first hawk, that eagle falconry was a thing. And it wasn't so much in the United States, but that there was this rich cultural tradition in Central Asia of people hunting in partnership with golden eagles off of horseback for red foxes. And that, to me, as amazing as falconry itself seemed, that niche seemed like something out of Lord of the Rings. Like, right, what? Like, yeah, I could do this? And so I became very motivated to learn how to fly an eagle. And it wasn't possible at the time in the US, but I was very fortunate when I graduated with my bachelor's degree in zoology. I applied for a Fulbright scholarship to Mongolia. And a hot tip for anybody that's applying for grants: if you choose a country not many people want to go to, you have a pretty good odd of getting that grant. And so for Fulbright, it was something like 8 people applied for 5 permits or 5 grants. So I won one, and that funded me to live in Mongolia for a year. And my goal was to apprentice myself to a Kazakh eagle master there. So I should also mention, so Mongolia is predominantly Mongolian people live there, ethnic Mongols, which are Buddhist. But in the far western corner are Kazakh people, which are a Turkic people that are Muslim and speak Kazakh. So it's technically it's Mongolian Kazakhs that I stayed with. So I fly into Ulaanbaatar, the capital of Mongolia, take a couple-day bus, which is a bit of a harrowing experience, but also so was the domestic flight all the way out to the western corner into the Four Corners area, we would call it. So that's where Russia, China, Mongolia, and Kazakhstan all meet. The Altai Mountains are there, and that's the cradle of this really ancient falconry tradition, maybe the first falconry tradition, this hunting foxes with eagles. And that whole region is fascinating because horses were likely domesticated in the general area, some of the earliest evidence for dog domestication. And in this area also, my inner anthropologist coming out, the land isn't very suitable for agriculture, can be quite harsh. And so people have ingeniously learned to get everything they need from partnering, domesticating different kinds of animals. So horses, of course, goats, sheep, yak, cows, camels, the Bactrian camel, which is the two-humped camel. And then there's dogs, there's cats, and eagles. And it's really a ingenious way of life out there. So I lived there for a year. I had a wonderful mentor who took me into his family. They were a nomadic family. We lived in the yurts, the gers, you would say, and moved with the seasons. And he helped me obtain an eagle and train it. And we caught 10 foxes with her. And I enjoyed that so much that I then applied for a PhD in anthropology at the University of St. Andrews. And so went back for a second year, in part to finish my, to do the fieldwork component for my degree. And then since then, I came back to the US, and still there was not much eagle falconry being done in the US. And I wanted to bring that knowledge home. So we have a very small, dedicated group of us now, and a very neat application for this skill is in rehabilitation, because eagles are such slow developing, long-lived creatures. If a young golden eagle comes into rehab, and by young, within the first year or two of its life, a lot of times they're still dependent on their parents. They're still harassing their parents for food. And if they come into rehab before they've fully achieved independence, you cannot just heal what ails them and let them go, because they haven't the skills to survive and they will starve. So you can take that eagle and fly it as a falconry eagle, where here you're giving it the time to develop its hunting skills, its soaring skills. That's another very important skill, where you're ensuring it's fit and well fed. So it's got time to figure that out. And then once it's achieved the ability to fly and catch its own dinner reliably, can let that eagle go back to the wild and be pretty assured that it'll do well. So that's been the driving force in my life, and something I'm very passionate about.
I want to be a falconer. This just sounds so exciting. Now, I'm also getting a real education here. So let's talk a little bit about falconry, and then we're going to move on to, the challenges that you're facing, that you and your animals are facing. So going back to when you knew when you were 14, you wanted to be a falconer. What can you describe the most satisfying moments of in the art and science of falconry? When have you felt the most fulfilled and satisfied with your work?
Oh yeah, easy. So sometimes people ask, why do falconry? And it's because it gives you a front row seat to something that happens every day in nature, but is generally hidden from view, which is a bird of prey stooping, doing amazing aerial aerobatics to try and catch its dinner. And not only do I get to see it, I get to be a part of it. And it has given me empathy for predators, because it is difficult to figure out how to catch a rabbit. It sounds simple. And so my most memorable moments are almost always the first time that a hawk or an eagle that I had caught its first rabbit. And it's almost always after weeks of trying, after many attempts, and the rabbit's just making the eagle look silly. And then finally they're able to figure it out. And you can just sit there. I love hunting on the prairie, which will relate to what we talk about with the big guys, but to be out on the prairie with an eagle that's contentedly eating its rabbit that it caught, and just sharing that very primal, natural moment, is deeply satisfying, because we truly have worked together for the same goal. And there's nothing that an eagle loves more than flying and hunting. And so it really develops that relationship with you. So it makes they're just calm and happy with you. And so I feel like I truly have a partnership in that moment.
You're fortunate. And I have a feeling that I can just feel it in my bones through the centuries, thousands of years, that other humans have felt that same feeling.
You're spot on. Yeah.
That along with I don't think I think every human child has looked up at a bird and gone, that must be so cool to be able to fly. But there's things that we can look at it in the wild and just enjoy it. Oh, I just love that story. That is wonderful. Now, I couldn't help but note, okay, one other thing about falconry and that corner where Mongolia and Kazakhstan and what were the other two countries? Nepal,
Russia and China.
Russia and China. Okay, that seemed to be the apex of of humans learning to exist with animals. Did you also find that the animals coexisted with the other animals a little bit better? Because I'm certain I saw a photograph of you in the same room with one of your hosts with a gigantic eagle in the room and a cat just sitting there together.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, something that's, let's see how to say this. I definitely noticed that. And even with the wild animals. So for example,
Really?
here in the US, if you see a golden eagle, you typically can't get very close before it flies away.
Yeah. I've never seen one. Only
well,
bald.
And then
And bald
Mongolia,
eagles are a lot smaller than golden eagles, aren't they?
they're about the same size.
About the same. Okay.
Yeah, 8 to 10, 12 pounds, depending on how fat it is. But in Mongolia, those wild golden eagles and wild birds of prey don't really have that same flight response, fear response to people. And I think it's related to, here they've been in the US, they've been shot at, there's development, and out in Central Asia, humans have been living out there for thousands of years in that way, and they're not persecuted.
Yeah.
So I like that about the wild. I saw tons of wild animals all the time that seemed unconcerned with me, and I really enjoyed that.
Oh, definitely in America. The only time you see wild animals up close is if they've been taught that these particular humans aren't a threat. And we're usually talking like city park, and I'm talking raccoons and things like that. But no, you normally don't get to see wild animals. So, and one other thing, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the big guys and the challenges that you have. I understand that falconry is legal in every state of the nation except Hawaii, but highly regulated. What's that all about? All that regulation?
Yeah, so it's not legal in Hawaii because they have so many fragile species there that you wouldn't want to accidentally catch with a bird of prey. But yeah, the regulation is purely to ensure that somebody doesn't go out because they fancy a pet falcon or a pet hawk and try to get one and keep it in a way that's not healthy to the bird. And
Okay.
So what's involved in the regulation is, and it's really a good system,
Okay.
is you have to have a mentor. So your first stage as a falconer, officially you are an apprentice, and you have a mentor that teaches you for 2 years the ins and outs of how to train a bird of prey, keep one in captivity as healthy as possible. And then I personally, my own ethics is I love flying them because that's them getting to exercise all their natural instincts and be out there just like they would in the wild, but for a few hours a day. So it gives you, the mentorship gives you the skills to do that. Because, of course it looks cool to have a bird of prey on your glove, but the reality of actually doing right by one can be quite complicated. So this just helps ensure that.
So this is good regulation. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's to prevent amateurs, people who think they like a wannabe amateur from saying, "Oh, I'll get a falcon," and then probably overwhelmingly, if people were allowed to just wantonly go get a falcon and train it, I would guesstimate that over 90% would give up and go, it's too time consuming.
Yeah, that's right. And despite the the hoops to jump through. Falconry has become, in the 20 years that I've done it in the US, much more open. I feel like you see many more women doing it, many more people of color. It's not just an old white guys club like it was for a long time. So it's
Well,
accessible like that.
that's encouraging. That's
Yeah.
encouraging. Most things start out that way.
This is true.
I'm glad that's very, very encouraging. So what would you say are the challenges that people like yourself are facing? And let's say here in America, since this listenership is pretty much predominantly United States, what are some of the challenges facing folks like yourself?
Yeah. So think about it this way. So you have a golden eagle that you know you have to go take hunting and help it learn how to hunt, help it learn how to soar. Where do you go do that? You can't do it in a city. I mean, there are many hazards to flying birds of prey. There's collisions with windows, with cars and traffic, electrocution, wind turbines. So you want to be away from those man-made hazards. All right, so you have to drive out of your city or town, and then you've got to have a place to fly that actually has rabbits. And for me, I adore jackrabbits. Black-tailed jackrabbits are what I primarily hunt, and I definitely, gosh, I almost think about them spiritually now because I've seen them. They so often get away from the eagle, and it's just amazing. They make the whole enterprise work, and sometimes I even cook them, and they're delicious. And nothing like having a meal that you worked to get the really, really hard way, like by training an eagle first. But anyway, so you've got to go find land that is healthy enough where these animals exist, these jackrabbits. And that's challenging. So there's public land, which is what I mostly hunt now, state trust land and private land. And what I have in most falconers, I think if you spoke to them, what we continually encounter is, okay, we find a piece of relatively pristine public land that has jackrabbits. Well, but then in a few years, the city expands and people come out there and run their ATVs all over it and degrade it to the point where it can't sustain jackrabbits. Or I get permission on a really nice piece of private land, but then it ends up getting sold and developed and turned into a strip mall. Overgrazing is an issue I see a lot. Where I end up walking a field to try to find signs of jackrabbits, and it's just been grazed down to the nub by cows, so it can't sustain any foraging for rabbits. Which to me, jackrabbits feel in the American West, Central Plains and Western states feel like a great litmus for the health of an ecosystem. There should always be rabbits there because they are the foundation that everything preys upon. Foxes, coyotes, owls, hawks, falcons, eagles. I mean, everything loves to eat a jackrabbit, so they should be there. And when they're not, it's very eerie. It's a disquieting moonscape. So what I feel like happens is I work hard scouting to discover these little pristine pockets that I can reach from where I live, but then I know it's an ephemeral thing because it only takes a few years for it to be developed into, a big box store or agriculture or maybe unsustainable cattle ranching. And then I have to experience the grief of losing that field. And I know that sounds, it's something that I've come to terms with because it shocked me on how much it made me feel. Grief is really the only word for it. And I ended up learning there's a phrase called ecological grief that you feel when you've lost something, some part of the natural world that you've enjoyed. But a field that I regularly take my eagles to, I know intimately. I know every grassy swale. I know every contour of the hill, if there's a hill there, how the wind butts up against it, how the eagle gets lift from that wind, which grassy areas are likely to have jackrabbits sitting in them, the way that the jackrabbit might run against the the land, and then the way the eagle might, and then I have so many memories imbued within that landscape that when it's raised to the ground, it's like, you know, a piece of you is just gone, and you feel a bit like, so of course this eagle falconry in particular being a very ancient tradition, you get the sense that you're racing against time, trying to hang on to something that might not be possible for that much longer, because how feasible is it going to be for me to find landscapes, healthy landscapes that I can fly these eagles on? Which then, of course, makes you wonder the wild eagles. I mean, there is a national decline in jackrabbits across the US, and that's just bad. Again, base of the ecosystem, bad for everything. So I consider myself an optimist, but these are the things that kind of keep me up at night, that I just, that come to the fore for me through flying eagles here in the United States.
Well, I've decided I'm not going to eat rabbit anymore. As I didn't, I adore rabbit, especially cooked in the French style with mustard. But I didn't know about the reduction in the jackrabbit population across the United States. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, well, in most, of course, most people aren't, and even among biologists, they aren't a popular animal to study. So there's not that many studies out there. People aren't paying attention to them like you might with a charismatic megafauna, you know, grizzly bears or wolves or something else. But you can definitely still eat swamp rabbits or cottontail rabbits in Louisiana. That is totally fine.
I guess it's because I was raised with the idea that rabbits were nature's fast food. And that the rabbits could just make more rabbits, and the supply was endless, and you don't have to worry about, and that's something you never have to worry about. They'll just make more, and so maybe that attitude is not the proper attitude, if what you say is true, that there's been a decline in this. And these are jackrabbits, you said?
They're jackrabbits, and
Jackrabbits.
you're absolutely right. So from being from Oklahoma, in the Dust Bowl, and they used to have jackrabbit drives. So there were periods in the last 50, 100 years at Oklahoma where there would be so many jackrabbits that they would jackrabbit roundups, that's what they call them. Ranchers would round them all up into a corral and kill them by the hundreds, because they could always make more. And it's like the passenger pigeon thing, right? There seems to be so many. But the problem is the landscape is literally disappearing. So if, 1,000 acres, that's all now, pavement, where do the jackrabbits go? Or, a bunch of acreage that is grazed down to the nub, what are they going to eat? So it's just reaching that more and more critical point. In another life, I would be a jackrabbit biologist. I would love to do some of these studies and help get a handle on the problem, figure out what it is. And it's an issue.
I'm not an environmental expert and a biologist, but I do know enough to know that every animal matters. Now, even the animals I don't like fire ants. Fire ants are a real problem in New Orleans. They bite, they hurt, but even I know we need the fire ants, and even I know that we shouldn't use insecticides on them. You should invite them to move elsewhere, but don't kill them. Even I understand that, and I'm not surprised. I didn't know about the reduction in the rabbit population, but I'm not surprised, but I'm glad to know now. Well, I think your wish will come true, because on wanting to take some sort of stand in preventing your favorite grasslands from being swallowed up by big biz or big ag or grazing. Because if you are out there and sympathetic to big businesses' antics, and big businesses is all about making money. Big business doesn't care. They may have a on their website, they may have some silly statement about how they care, but they don't care about the environment. They only care about money and nothing else. And I do believe I think after this episode goes live and people learn about how you're sympathetic to people. There are lots of people out there that are upset. I have one guest who is on my podcast who had purchased land for her dream home to retire, and boom, right next door, they were going to build a chemical plant. I mean, literally right next door, a chemical plant, which would make plastic. And so she formed a community of people to fight it and won. So someone like yourself, who are already passionate about keeping our grasslands, or the rabbit lands, we'll call them rabbit lands, keeping the rabbit lands the way they are, you would make a great face. Yeah, and I would go so far, looking at your record, your history, I would call you a celebrity. And I think you'd be an amazing face and voice for any group of people trying to fight big biz, because big biz, they're very beatable. And I have episodes that go into why they're beatable. They all they care about is money, and if that's the only thing you care about, they're easy to beat, because the people who are fighting them care about lots more things than money. Lots more things than money, and that's how they win. That's one of the ways that they win. So I think that your days of that very, very soon, whatever campaign that is, or whatever mission that is, I think it may come to you. You may find it on your own, but I think you would be a splendid voice for Rabbitland.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear. Thank you. Because you do feel, as you know, I just feel so tiny in the face of this wave of agriculture or development, and I want some of it to be left for us to enjoy, for the animals that make up that ecosystem to be able to thrive there. And I'm contemplating my strategy, but that's very encouraging.
It's being just, all you have to do is be a voice, and show up at a hearing, show up at a meeting, show up and explain, why you believe in keeping this particular rabbit land the way it is. And that's it. That's all you have to do. But just, it's groups of people, even small groups of people, can stop any big biz. They're all stoppable. Little me with no experience, no engineering experience, stopped the Army Corps of Engineers from putting out a lie that the flooding of New Orleans was caused by a natural disaster, a hurricane, and turned up it was their own mistakes. It was their levee building mistakes that killed over 1,400 people. But they put that lie out there, and they almost got away with it. And I fought the biggest engineering outfit in the world and won. Now, I didn't do it alone, but I was the face of the organization. And that all you need is a group of people. Our group wasn't started out as just a handful of people. It eventually grew. Everything starts out with a couple of people, a handful of people. And I feel very, very confident that the day is going to come where you're going to find something very, very worthwhile to get involved in, to keep those rabbits where they are, and to keep those eagles happy, and to keep you happy with your passion, with your art, and with your art that you are helping to preserve for hopefully thousands of years ahead of us.
Oh man, this is great. Next time I'm feeling down, I'm gonna remember this conversation. Yeah. Well, and even just, I mean, there are many ways that people can sustainably recreate on land like that. But I love to take people out with the eagle when I fly it, because here's a way that somebody can see a bird of prey up close, see what it does naturally up close, be on the landscape, and appreciate it for the way that it is when it's in a healthy state that it should be. And I think I can open a lot of eyes also by having an eagle with me and taking people out with the eagle. And I look forward to doing that in the future.
Oh, I would love to be a guest for one of those.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to do when I come to Oklahoma.
Yeah, let's go hawking.
I want to go hawking. And also for the listeners out there that may not get a chance to go to Oklahoma in the near future, there are wonderful videos online where you can watch the Laura working with her eagle and catching rabbits, and it's quite fascinating. You see the antics that she described, the things that a bird will do, the flips and the turns and the things that they do. And then the rabbit is also very skilled at getting away from the eagle, which is really quite remarkable to watch.
Yes, yeah, that evolutionary arms race and all of the high drama of the best TV show, but shrunk down into a few seconds of a flight. Yeah.
And it's fast. That's another thing. It's fast, but the video will slow it down for you. So I welcome. In fact, so where would you direct our listeners to watch these videos that I'm talking about?
So my website is just my name, laurenmcgough.com. Or you just put Lauren
but it's not
McGough.
spelled McGough. It's spelled McGouh.
Yes, I'm sure my ancestors said McGough, and then somewhere in America we started saying McGough. Yes.
McGough with a little bit of a cough at the end of that. McGough. Did I hear something at the end?
That's right.
I learn something every day. Is there anything else that we're about run out of time? Laura, is there anything that you could like to add to share with our listeners today?
Oof, no, good question. I guess I would, last thought is what amazes me, what I've learned through falconry is how the wild can seep in through the cracks of even a very urban environment. So anybody that's looking to connect with nature, I mean, bird watching just in a city, you'll be amazed what you see. That high drama that I talked about, you'll see a Cooper's hawk try to catch a pigeon, just in the most urban environment. And I think I profoundly believe that connecting with real nature wherever you can, even in those cracks, is good for us all.
Fabulous advice. And all you have to do is look. It's going on all around us every day. All around us. Just look. And it's going on. That's absolutely true. And connect with it, embrace it, and think of it as an art, which is art in real life. So thank you so much, Lauren. My guest today was Lauren McGough. McGough? Well, actually, she pronounced it McGough now. Lauren McGough. Thank you so much, Lauren.
All right. Thank you, Sandy.
And you, the listeners, I hope that all of you enjoyed this episode. Please be sure to rate, subscribe, and like my podcast, Beat the Big Guys, on all of your favorite platforms. And remember, no matter who you are, you too can beat the big guys.